of the logos and letters. My name is Liam, and I'm going to cover this paragraph here in chapter 10. So learning about oppositions, of course, we've got 4 ways of being opposed. That's relatives, contraries, being deprived of something natural and having something natural, and the pairs of affirmation or affirming something, or negation, denying something. Okay, so let's continue on. Hosmenun, reading down here. Hosmenun hosta prosti antikaitai. Right, so the relatives like opposed. Auta haper estiton antikaimenon legatai. Right, so they're usually spoken of what they're opposed to. Hoposun alos pros auta. Right, so in any other way whatsoever in relation to them. Hoposun is a mouthful to translate to English. We've got un there at the end of the word, which is like soever, wheresoever, whensoever, whatsoever, whomsoever. And then hopos is like in how many ways. Okay, so hoposun and alos is in like, it magnifies the sense of this word when they're together. So in relation to these things. So let's just get stuck in, okay? And then this will become a lot clearer, this first part. So hoyon to diplasion, so the double. Auto hoper estin heteru diplasion legetai. Right? So dinoscar diplasion. There's the full stop there. So heteru diplasion legetai dinoscar diplasion. So right, it's the double of something. We don't speak of a double in a vacuum. All right, I didn't want to do that. I thought that was highlighter. We don't speak of any double in a vacuum. We speak it as being double of something, and that's why it is like prosti, right? It's a relative. It implies something else. It correlates. Same as half. Half is not just half in a vacuum. Half is half of something. All right, so they use the genitive case. We just use the word of, that helper article sort of thing there. And that's the way it is opposed. Okay, so you can see the sense of things being opposed as being a relative, because in this logic text, being opposed just means that you sort of implicate, you gesture towards something else that your existence, that relationship depends on. Okay, so the double is double of what? It's a double of some half. Okay, and a half is half of what? It's half of some like double, really. So yeah, okay, we can conceive it like that. All right, so the numbers 10 and 5 should do a good job here. So we can say, if I said to a student, say something about this this pair of numbers, the student might say, oh, this is half of that. Okay, then double of that, right? So you can see that relationships, they're not opposed in the modern sense where they're like fighting each other, all right? They're not competing against each other. They're not at war with each other. Opposed here in the pure logical sense, or this ancient sense of the word, is just that they imply, okay? Now that that's covered, let's just keep going on. Auto hoperestin heteru deplasion legetai. Okay, kai he episteme, knowledge. Right, we've spoken of knowledge being a relative. The genus is a relative. The species is not. Okay, the species, it's not spoken of something else. But let's have a look here. Kai he episteme de toi episteme toi. Right, so the knowledge in relation to that, like that knowable thing. Hosta prosti antikaitai. Right, so. And in thus is like relative, right? Is a opposition relative. Kai legatai ge he episteme auto hoperesti tu episte tu, right? The knowledge of something knowable. Kai to episte ton, right? The knowable thing. De auto hoperesti pros entikaimenon legatai. Dein epistamen, right? So this knowable thing is knowable because it's some kind of knowledge, right? Like that's just how it goes. that's obvious, and the knower is obviously going to be playing a role in this. However, whenever you have something that's knowledge, you know automatically that it was knowable in the first place, and there's some object of that knowledge. Okay, so take the Greek that you're looking at. If you don't understand any of this Greek, or all but just one little piece, it's still knowable. It's still knowledge. Like for me, when I look at it, it's difficult at times, of course, and it really tests your memory because there's so many larger words that are uncommon. You only see them once in every blue moon, and it's still a knowable object. It's knowledge in my head, and it's relative. It's like, what do you know? Well, I have knowledge of Greek, so Greek is knowable, right? They go hand in hand like that. So the knowledge is spoken of according to some noble thing. Kaito episteton. Yeah, I think I've read that. Togar episteton. Right? It's dini legetai episteton. Right? This is a strange one to say. Dini. Like it's de episteme. So this last part is an interesting little concept. Let me just highlight this interesting little one. All right. Togar episteton. Dini legata episteton de episteme. Okay. So, it's some particular what? Some particular knowable object. Some particular knowable object, right, is spoken of in relation to the knowledge. Well, yeah, that's how it usually works. What's an example of that? Let's take horse riding. Actually, no, that's too complex because that's sort of like an action. I've spoken about my Greek. I need a fresh example here. Fresh example of someone learning something. Some knowable object. Here we go. They're learning their letters. All right, these kids are learning their letters. Well, some of them are. I don't know what the others are doing. All right. That kid's face cracks me up every time. So they're learning their letters. They're learning how to pronounce letters together. Okay. This is a knowable object. These are knowable things, right? And these are the knowers, and the knowledge is relative to them. All right. So something is known. It's spoken relative to what the knowable object is. And the knower has that relation. So I might leave that there. Doesn't need too much more expounding. This last part's just quite an echo. That's why I find it so interesting. It's quite an echo of a former chapter that we've looked at, whereas like the perceiver, the perceivable, and the perception. What was that? Was that chapter 7? Like halfway through chapter 7? So, in short, how can we summarize this paragraph? What did we learn? All right, this whole paragraph. Let me clean it up first, so it's not too distracting. This paragraph that we just covered here is showing how one form of opposites is relatives. Right? Relatives imply each other. They have a rule that governs them. A sort of correlation where they point at one another. We've covered that before. Expanding upon that, the perception and knowledge is a perfect example. We've spoken about knowledge, but it's just showing you how it's like opposed. It's just showing you how it works, because all knowledge is of some knowable object, and all knowable objects speak to the knowledge of them, right? And so theoretically, someone might not know a thing. Okay, sure. In the mind of God, of course, it could be there. It would be there. However, the rule still stands firm, even if someone doesn't know it. Okay, it still has that knowledge that can be there. So it's an interesting way. It's definitely a lesson on epistemology here, right? It's linguistics and epistemology. And when those two get together, it is quite complex. But the overall rule to take away is that all prosody falls under the heading of opposition. Why? Because of the implication of one to the other. So let's leave it there. That's actually a great way to end it. Probably should have started with that sentence too. But anyway, we got there in the end. So hopefully that this lesson has left you with some more thoughts that you've got in your head. Maybe it's satisfied some questions that you've had in your head. We're proceeding on with how things are opposed. Hopefully your understanding of opposition is broadening, and seeing how all these parts relate one to the other. You know, prosody is a supreme genus, and we're seeing it sort of grouped under this heading of oppositions, right? Which is not to say opposition is a supreme genus, okay? It's just a word that we use to collect all of them together, okay? So yeah, seeing that relation, being able to identify that relatives are things opposed is very, very interesting. For the modern speaker of English, at least, the word opposition has this sense of at war with, violence towards one another, thwarting the other, right? Hot and cold, good and evil, light and dark, right? Lightness and darkness. So it's not so the case. And it helps with clarification, knowledge, and things like that, and articulation when that sort of new perspective is introduced. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed that. In the next recording that I do, I'll cover this, and we'll go down. Still got Noah's experts down here. Let me get rid of that. Can't. And then we'll go down. So it covers all sorts of things, like what's in our nature, things like habits and vices and virtues and all sorts of things, definitions. This chapter is very, very comprehensive. This chapter is critical to later work. If you're a person who wants to learn logic when it comes to like syllogisms and things like that, this is the content matter that we're going to be using in a lot of syllogisms. This work here is technical, it's necessary, it's essential. So if you enjoy it, awesome, because you're going to be paid 100-fold. If you don't enjoy this particular chapter, I understand. Talking about opposites can seem so abstract. I will do my best to try and make it more concrete, like I did with this lesson, this image here. So bear with me and give me some little bit of charity when it comes to that. I'll do my best. And as always, si semper fortis in opere tuo. My name is Liam, and I'll see you next time.